It's been a long week, the highlight of which has been the Fed.
Yes.
And digital assets essentially did not escape the volatility that we saw across financial markets post-Fed.
Not at all. So you actually saw Bitcoin outperform traditional stocks a little bit on Thursday, but if you zoom out, and people on Twitter will always tell you to zoom out, it's just been a brutal stretch for Bitcoin, down 58%, almost 59% year to date. You compare that to the NASDAQ 100. These two tend to trade in lockstep, but the magnitude of losses in Bitcoin so much greater. The NASDAQ 100 down only in quotes, 30% or so year to date.
I'm going to ask you the most 2021 question I can. Whatever happened to Bitcoin being an inflation hedge?
Well, it's a bit of a tortured answer that I'm going to give you because, again, if you post a chart...
You're not torturing me, you're torturing the audience.
I am. So if you posted a chart of Bitcoin on Twitter, everyone will always tell you to zoom out. And that's sort of the answer that I have to give about Bitcoin as an inflation hedge. Advocates will still say, in the grand fullness of time, it is an inflation hedge. When you have central banks really printing money is the answer you would get. I feel that right now we are at the test of that thesis because now you have central banks around the globe removing stimulus, tightening liquidity, hiking central bank rates. We haven't seen this environment with Bitcoin as a mainstream asset. This has really never happened before. So we're watching that experiment in real time.
It's kind of funny because it's the first time in our lifetime, at least, where we've had a pandemic, but we've also had inflation. So
it's been a lot. It's been a lot.
Volatility in digital currencies, digital assets, volatility in the industry.
Indeed.
There have been a lot of, well-known founders, CEOs of some of the more well-known crypto-related startups departing.
Absolutely. Of course, the big headline, which this program covered well yesterday, Jesse Powell, the Kraken CEO and co-founder, stepping down from the exchange from that role. Of course, Chief Operating Officer David Ripley is going to succeed him. But that's just part of a trend that we're seeing. To your point, of course, Michael Saylor stepping down as MicroStrategy CEO in August really kicked this off. A few weeks later, you had Michael Morrow from Genesis do the same. So it's this interesting moment in the industry where you are seeing a lot of upheaval in the C-suite, a lot of transition. And it seems like the face of who's actually leading the industry right now is changing. Of course, we do have a lot of stalwarts, such as Sam Bankman-Fried, such as Michael Novogratz, still in their positions. So it's not completely new, but definitely a time of transition. I
got two more questions. But, as somebody that's covered Silicon Valley startups, forget, necessarily crypto, a lot of this is like a changing of the guard, right? Sometimes they're pushed out.
Exactly.
Sometimes they've had enough. Sometimes investors get involved, right? This is a really critical time for the industry. Talk to us kind of about that changing of the guard and the moment it falls in.
To your experience, to put this in your world, covering Silicon Valley, it's hard to transition away from a founder leading the company. And we are seeing a little bit of that. Of course, it'll be really interesting to see where Kraken goes from here because the founders become really the identity of the company. So it's going to be interesting to see how the crypto industry handles this moment, who's going to step up to the plate, and who ultimately continues to hang around and transition, who becomes sort of the Mark Zuckerberg of the crypto industry, in just the sense that he's been there.
Hey, real quick, did the merge matter?
Did the merge matter? That's a really good question. It mattered in that it looks like it turned to a sell the news event. Obviously, Ether rallied so heavily into the merge. It doesn't much matter for the end experience if you're a holder of Ether. It's going to be important to see whether it does lead to this sort of influx of development in terms of the apps on the Ethereum blockchain. And we still have a few more tests to go through when it comes to the merge. It's not completely over yet, but the bulk of it is out of the way.